Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to Stories on the Rooftop, the first one for 2021. We're delighted to have you all here with us today, and wherever you are, we hope you are keeping safe and well. My name is Sabrina Nanji, team member for the Stories on the Rooftop, which is part of the Arts and Culture portfolio of the Aga Khan Youth and Sports Board. Stories on the Rooftop is a platform for sharing personal experiences and engaging in open dialogue with each other. Through these conversations, we seek to enhance our understanding of the diversity of experiences within our community, whilst also connecting with each other to discuss issues that are relevant to all of us. I'm delighted that Nazreen Visram will be our first speaker of the year. This evening, Nazreen will share her journey from childhood to today and how she has overcome adversity, navigating a career in banking, which has traditionally been male-dominated. Nazreen will also talk about her commitment to diversity and inclusion, having been recognised as an Empower Top 100 ethnic minority role model for 3 years in a row. As well as this, she has been recognised as Brummel Magazine's Top 30 Inspirational Women in the City in 2019. Nazreen will share the challenges she has faced and lessons that she has learned. Before I hand over to Nazreen, I'll just run through a few logistical points. Nazreen will start off by sharing her story, and we'll have time for questions after. You can, of course, ask questions by typing in the chat box throughout. Nazreen is keen to make this interactive, and she is happy to take questions which she may answer as the session develops. So please feel free to type your questions in the chat space at any time, and we'll aim to get through them all in turn. At the end of the session, we will have a short evaluation survey, which we'd appreciate if you could complete. Please do switch on your video if you feel comfortable, and put your display name as your real name. It's always nice to see faces and know who everyone is. Finally, as I mentioned, Stories is all about sharing personal experiences, and we want to have a safe space for everyone to be able to share their views. So please be respectful when sharing your comments. With that, I'd now like to invite Nazreen to begin. Thanks, Nazreen, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, and Yali Madad, and good evening, everyone. And also, I think good afternoon, because I think I've got my family here who've dialed in all the way from Calgary, Toronto, and various other places around the world. So good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'd just like to begin by saying thank you to Stories on the Rooftop and the Aga Khan Youth and Sports Board for inviting me to speak today. And thank you to all of you for joining. It's great to have such a great turnout. I know we have such a long screen time these days, and by the end of the day we're pretty much zoomed out, so I'm really pleased to see that all of you have made the effort to join and come and listen to me today. So Farin and Sabrina approached me to come and speak at Stories on the Rooftop, and I had attended previous sessions, and I also looked up previous speakers, and I've got to say, I'm really inspiring speakers. We've had space explorers, we've had emergency responders, all you Salim Suleiman fans out there, we've had them as well. We've also had rally car drivers, and I profess to be none of those actually, but what I can share today is my story. And throughout my journey, I've always been inspired by other people's stories. I always learn something new. Whether that's for now in a particular stage in my life or in the future, I always gain a really useful piece of advice. And so my request to all of you today is that I hope you learn something today, and I hope you can take something away from my talk today, wherever you are on your journey, whether that's personally or professionally. So today, the way I'm going to structure today's talk actually is I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm going to talk through my childhood and how I grew up. I'm then going to tell you a bit about my career journey into banking and my role as head of charities. And then I'll talk a bit about diversity and inclusion, because that's something I'm hugely passionate about and is, you know, really key topic in the current climate. And then I'm sort of just going to share some of my life lessons and mantras that I use kind of being slightly wiser and older in the world and have helped me through my journey. So as Sabrina said, yes, I'd love this to be interactive. I know I can see there's about 81 people on the call, so it's probably if you could just submit any questions through the chat, I will try and pick them up as I go along. If not, we will wait towards the end, and I'll do my best to answer as many questions as I can. So I'm just going to share my screen in true corporate style. Of course, I've got slides, but these are just to aid the discussion and just to make it a little bit more interesting. So this is a little bit about me. And this first picture on here is actually, I'm going to come to that because that reflects a bit about my childhood, and I'll share that with you shortly. I studied at King's College London. I did a degree in chemistry. Don't ask me why. That was just a subject that I particularly enjoyed while I was studying, and I didn't actually know what I wanted to do when I was about 18 years old, so off I went to study a degree in chemistry. I'm married to Salim. We have a 12-year-old son, Ilyan, so you can see a picture, and that's a picture from ESF a good few years ago. For many of you, this might be disappointing, but I'm a huge Arsenal fan, and that's very much my husband's influence, actually. And there's a picture of me with the legend that is Ian Wright, but we probably won't talk about Arsenal today. We'll move on very quickly. I am passionate about yoga. I started doing yoga a few years ago. I've not been very good during lockdown, I've got to say, but that's me doing the baby crow for the first time. But I find yoga has been actually really helpful in terms of health, mind and soul, actually. The picture here is with my cousin Esmina, and in 2017 we ran our first half marathon together. And I've got to say that was a massive challenge for me, having never run before. And I've got to say, I was inspired by Esmina because she was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 40. She overcame that. She's healthy, and she decided to run a half marathon and take us all along with her. So off we went and did that half marathon back in 2017. Just some of my accolades, really. So you can see House of Commons. I actually had the opportunity to speak at the first ever International Women's Day BAME event for individuals from ethnic minorities, and I actually spoke about pluralism and the Global Centre for Pluralism. So it was a huge privilege to share the the Imam's work and the concept of pluralism on that stage. And I've been listed in the Financial Times as an ethnic minority role model, and that's very much to do with my work with diversity and inclusion. And in various other magazines here, you can see Brummel magazine, and you can also see I made it as a finalist for the Asian Women of Achievement Awards back again in, I think it was 2017, which again was a huge achievement and a huge privilege to be there. This picture here, you may be wondering what that is all about, but after I finished studying chemistry, my chosen profession and what I would really have loved to have done is become a forensic scientist. That's what I really wanted to do, but unfortunately my journey didn't go that way. So I ended up into the world of banking, and I'll touch on that as I go through my talk. So what I'm going to do now is really share a little bit about my childhood, and I think it's really important for me to share this with you because it's a big part of who I am. And it's a big part of where I am today, actually. So my mother was a victim of domestic abuse, and she made the very courageous decision to leave my father and to seek a better life for us. And this was back in the 1970s. So some of you may not be old enough to know the 1970s, but I'd like for those of you that are to kind of shift your mind back to the 1970s. So when she left my dad, I was just 2 years old. And she was also 7 months pregnant with my brother. And she was only around 22, 23 years old herself. She ended up in a women's aid hostel. And now the majority of her family were in Canada at this time. And although we had family here in the UK who did support us, my mum had to essentially rebuild her life all over again. She worked tirelessly doing 3 jobs at a time to give the best education and life she could, despite the challenges and stigmas she faced from family, the community and society at large. During that time, if you can think about the 70s, I mean, it's a stigma now actually, but in the 70s, it was unheard of for women to leave their husbands, particularly in Asian communities. And so she faced many stereotypes, and as did we, as her children, stigmas such as lazy or work shy or you want to just claim benefits, things like that, I heard throughout all my childhood. And people just assumed that, you know, we would just be disadvantaged. And we were disadvantaged, of course, because of the way we lived. But people just assumed that you're going to just follow one route in life and that's it. No parent wants to grow up being a single parent. No woman wants to grow up being a single mum. And actually, you know, being a parent myself, I can't imagine raising Ilian, you know, by myself. So my mum had to fulfill the responsibility of a mother and a father, and she did the best she could. And I think what we've got to remember is she actually made the right choice. You know, she hadn't left when she did. Things might have been very different for all of us right now. So she did actually make the right choice. So my mum worked all hours she could. I remember as a child, well, after school, I'd go and help her with some of her cleaning jobs so that she could finish them quickly and we could get home. We experienced, you know, extreme poverty at times. Despite the hardship, Mum always put food on the table. And I'm sure she went without herself some days. I'm sure she went without food, but she always made sure that myself and my brother had food on the table. Both my brother and I worked from a really early age. I remember doing the paper rounds back in the day, and I think you still do have paper rounds, but I was about 10 years old. I also used to babysit my neighbours' children after school. And as soon as I could work, which was I think around 15 years old, my first job was at the British Home Stores, which is no longer now, one of the many retail outlets that are now no longer. And I was earning the grand £1.97 per hour, which in those days was a huge amount of money. And for me, it was great because I could support my family and I could have a bit of financial independence. And I remember Levi jeans were all the rage back in those days. So I really wanted a pair of Levi jeans. And I went to my mum and I said, Mum, I really want a pair of these jeans. Everybody has those jeans. My friends have those jeans. And she said to me, look, Nazreen, I can't afford to give them to you or buy them for you. You're going to have to work for them yourself. And so I did. I saved up as much as I could for my jeans, and I think my mum felt sorry for me in the end. And when it came to the final £10 I needed to finally buy those pair of jeans, she gave it to me. So, you know, the concept of money was, you know, something we really learned at a young age. We also lived in Luton, so that picture that I'm showing you here is where we lived in Luton, and it's a social housing estate in Luton. We were in a, you know, as Asians, we were also in a minority. And, you know, again, cast your mind back to the 1980s where racism was hugely overt. So we were subject to racial abuse, actually, quite a lot of racial abuse. You know, where we lived, we had, you know, some good neighbours, but essentially, you know, we did experience a lot of racial discrimination. I was bullied at school. Based on racism. And I remember when I was in infant school, which is actually primary school as you term it now, and I was walking home from school one day with my best friend at the time, and we were both Asian, and we were both actually beaten up quite badly because of the colour of our skin. And I remember the rage in my mum's face when I went home, and the next day we went to the school and obviously those individuals were dealt with. But, you know, it was a horrible way to grow up, actually. And you know, to experience that. And it actually saddens me now that, you know, we live in a world where actually racism is still very rife. It may be slightly covert than overt, but, you know, it still exists. But despite all this hardship that we faced, and despite, you know, some of the examples I gave you about growing up, my mum instilled four really important things, I think, in us. And that was the first of the value of education. You know, education was going to be our passport to a better quality of life. And so she really, you know, I mean, she was one of those really strict parents that made us study really hard and made us, you know, really appreciate the value of education. And you've got to remember, we went to very average schools, local comprehensive, so we had to make the best of what we had. She taught us faith. Now, where we lived in Luton, we didn't have access to Jamaat Khana at a very early age, so you know, I didn't know much about the wider community and the benefits of being in the community. So, but she taught us faith. She taught us that there was always someone there looking out for us, and, you know, we should always keep faith close to our hearts. She also taught us hope. You know, hope is, you know, the biggest power that any human being can have. And she also taught us kindness. And not only her that taught us kindness, there were the people that came in and out of our lives that were very kind to us, actually. They were family, friends, colleagues, the wider community, neighbours. There were people that demonstrated acts of kindness. And my mum always said that if you're kind, you will receive that kindness back manyfold. So, you know, there were lots of things that my mum did so well. And those are the 4 things that I will always remember and I actually carry with me all the time. And what did this lifestyle teach me? What did this childhood teach me? It taught me resilience. You know, I mean, you've got to be pretty resilient to face all of that. It taught me independence, both independence of having to sort of fend for ourselves because, you know, mum was working pretty hard. It taught me financial independence and the role that is, particularly as a woman. It taught me courage. You know, my mum had the courage to make those decisions at a time when, you know, it was unheard of. I became very streetwise at a young age, so, you know, pretty much had to look after myself, and same for my brother. Strong work ethic, you know, working hard has stayed with me, and I think it's in everything that I do, whether that's at work or at home. The power of choice actually is the biggest thing, the power of choice, and I think this is what really my you know, when I talk about adversity and the opportunity, there is choice in there, like the choice my mum made. You know, when I was at school, I remember, and I think it was high school, and you know, when you do those careers advisory sessions, and I remember one of my teachers saying to me that people like you will only be able to do jobs like receptionist or a librarian or an admin assistant. Not there's anything wrong in doing those jobs, but that's what she said to me. And, you know, when I did the careers session, you know, things like, you know, doctor, scientist, all these things were coming up, and I was feeling like quite excited, thinking maybe I could actually do that type of job. And I remember how I felt when my teacher said that to me, and I felt really, really soul destroyed, actually. But actually what I wanted to do was prove her wrong, and prove her wrong that actually people like me can do anything they want to when they put their mind to it. And my journey may be different, my journey may be harder, but I will get there. So that power of choice, you choose to accept where you are, or you choose to do something about it. And I think, you know, that's what my whole experience as a child taught me. So I also just want to share 3 very pivotal moments from my childhood before I move on to career and talk about how I got into the world of banking. So there are 3 pivotal moments for me. One was when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and unfortunately mum became really unwell. She became really sick. So I had to go and live with an Ismaili family who were in Harrow. I lived with them for about 6 months. My brother also had to go and live with another family while mum, you know, was able to get better. And, you know, you can imagine that was quite a traumatic, sad time for us as a family. But actually, that 6 months, I got access to Jamaat Khana, I got access to Beit al-Ilm, and I started to realise that I belonged somewhere, because for a long time I didn't know where I belonged, but actually being with that family taught me so much, and that they're still very much my family today. And I started to feel I belonged somewhere. The second pivotal moment was when I was 9 years old, and at this point we were obviously, you know, I was back with mum, we were all back together in Luton. And an Ismaili family moved to Luton. And I remember them knocking our door and introducing themselves. And from then on, every week, they took us to Hatfield Jamaat Khana. And again, and also Beit al-Ilm every week. And again, that was life-changing for us as a family, and personally for me, because I got that sense of community, that sense of support. Hatfield Jamaat Khana are and still are our family. You know, I grew up in Hatfield Jamaat Khana. And so that they're really close to my heart. And it's because of that family we were able to go to Jamaat Khana. And so that sense of community, that sense of service, realizing my potential went a lot further. And then finally, I think the third and final pivotal moment of sort of growing up was in 1993 when I went to Aluma. And 93, it was shortly after my father had passed away. So again, it was a very difficult time in our family. I didn't want to go to Aluma. My mum forced me. She packed a bag and said, off you go. But I've got to say, truly transformational. I learned so much about my faith and me. And actually, I went on to join the program. So I became a tutor and a trainer, and I served on the Aluma program for nearly 10 years actually. So again, a pivotal moment in my life. So, you know, why am I telling you all of this? You know, why am I sharing, you know, such, and being very open about the type of childhood I've had? Well, I think what I wanted to say, it hasn't defined me, and it's not determined where I am. I could have, because despite what I experienced and despite what we experienced as a family, my life could have gone down two paths, one of destruction or one where I could actually change my destiny. And I was fortunate to have role models, you know, my mum for one, friends, community, family, some of my teachers who actually believed in me. They saw something in me and they helped me to realize my potential. And that's why I'm here today. And that's why for success for me, even though I showed you all these wonderful accolades of being in the Financial Times or being in the Brummel magazine or winning such an award, it's fantastic. You know, I'm truly honoured, and whenever I get recognised, I feel really thankful. But for me, it's not just personal, it's about giving back and being a visible, positive role model for others, because my duty now is to help others to succeed, not just to help myself and my family to succeed. So that's a bit about my childhood. Moving on now to my career now, which I think hopefully you'll find just as interesting. So you recall I said I wanted to be a forensic scientist. I did a chemistry degree. I finished my 4-year degree at King's College, and I really wanted to be the next, you know, CSI Miami investigator. And I found out how to do that. I had to do a master's degree if I wanted to be a forensic scientist and get into somewhere like the Metropolitan Police or wherever that may be. Unfortunately, I just couldn't afford to do a master's because of my financial circumstances. And I had quite a big chunky student debt to pay off. I had around £25,000 to pay off. And so my mum said to me, really sorry, Nazreen, but you just need to get a job, start paying that debt off. And also, you know, I needed to support my family. So off I went and got on the job ladder. So I started off in an American company called Expedite Systems. And I was making 500 cold calls a day on average, which, as you can imagine, was pretty, well, I would say soul destroying, but, you know, it kind of, you know, it's also character building at the same time. At the same time, I was also on the education board as a tutor and trainer for alumni. So I was doing that from a service perspective. And then that company went into sort of, they were downsizing and redundancies were on the horizon. And I kind of thought, well, I need to find another job now because I need to actually find something else. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck. So I went to a careers fair and I met somebody from NatWest Bank. And she said to me, guess what? You'd be really great at banking. And I kind of looked at her and said, but I have no experience in banking. And she said, it doesn't matter because actually you're great, you've got the right personality and character, and we'll train you. So off I went, I interviewed, got into NatWest. I was a sort of premier relationship manager and looking after high net worth individuals. Actually, Bruce Forsyth, if anyone remembers Bruce Forsyth, nice to see you nice. He was one of our clients, so I spoke to him on a regular basis. And so I worked there for a couple of years. I was also at the same time vice chair of the women's activities portfolio, which again really enjoyed serving and, you know, pushing the gender agenda in the community. And then I moved on and worked at Barclays. So I've now been working at Barclays for 16 years. I've just celebrated my 16-year anniversary. I started off as a relationship director or a banker as they're known now, and I was looking after clients in the retail and wholesale sector. So I have the privilege of looking after clients like Jimmy Choo, Zara, Versace, to name but a few. Great, because I spent most of my time shopping as my career, but you know, really enjoyed that. And it was all about relationship building. It was all about managing clients and supporting them with their banking needs. And then I've done a variety of roles here, as you can see. I was in between, sorry, I should say I had Ilian. So in 2008, I went on maternity leave for about 12 months. I returned back into the banker role, and then I moved on to head up citizenship globally for the corporate bank, which was one of my favourite roles in the bank. And I looked after the CSR strategy. I got to look at things like climate change, modern slavery, you know, the impact of banking on society. And this was just, you know, not long after the financial crisis. So banking was very much deemed as the worst place to be. And my responsibility was to just look at it in a different way and demonstrate the positive role that banking plays in society. So just to say, I never really had a career plan, if I'm really honest. I fell into banking accidentally. You know, for me, you know, career progression means many things. You know, for some it could be money, it could be titles, it could be seniority. For me, it's about being challenged, having responsibility, gaining new skills and knowledge, and having a sense of purpose. You know, every day I ask myself, what difference have I made today? How have I helped a particular client, or how have I helped my team, or how have I made a difference, sort of beyond my role? And so, you know, I got to really do that as head of citizenship. You know, it wasn't easy. As I said, in terms of career, I took more the stairs than the ladder approach. I believe in that, sort of taking steps rather than the ladder. You know, when I came back from maternity leave, I thought I was in a different world. Again, it was post-financial crisis. I had a new boss, essentially a new job. And I kind of said to him that I wanted to work 3 days a week. And he looked at me and he said, okay, we'll give it a go, shall we, Nazreen? So I tried to work 3 days a week. And when I really wanted to have 2 days at home with Ilian, and actually it was really hard because when you're client facing, clients kind of want you 5 days a week. So I was sort of sending emails and catching up late at night. And I went into the office one day, and Richard, his name is my boss, and actually one of the closest people I work with to this day. And he says, Nazreen, I want a word with you. And he called me in the office and I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done now? And he said to me, look, I'm really concerned that you're sending me emails at 1 a.m. And he said, you know, I know you want to work 3 days a week because you want to spend time with your son. But he said, look, you are losing out here. Just work 5 days a week. He says, if you need to work from home, just work from home. I totally understand. I have kids myself, and I work from home 1 day a week. We'll make this work. But I don't want you to be working to sort of 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. And you know what, a whole weight lifted off my shoulders. And I realized that I should have probably been honest and upfront in the beginning and worked it out. But Richard is still a great sort of mentor and sponsor to me. But you know, it was really hard coming back after having a child. I also went for promotions and I didn't get them. You know, there's many jobs that I've gone for in Barclays and I've not quite hit the mark. I've not been quite successful. And I've learned from that process, you know, because you've got to learn from failure. Otherwise, if you don't learn from failure, you'll never move on to the next level. Work-life balance has always been a challenge for me. And the best advice I've always received is you can have it all, but not at the same time. And I think that's hugely important because at different stages in your life, different things will take priority. It could be family, it could be parents, it could be health, and it could be your career. And it's just learning how to balance that. I mean, I'm really lucky, you know, my husband Salim is a really hands-on father and supports me in my career. But even so, you know, it's hard to balance all those things. And I think the one thing I've learned is just don't be so hard on yourself. You know, I've got 5 plates spinning one day, 4 of those plates may fall down and crash bang, and that's it. But it's okay. I pick myself up the next day and I learn from that. The other thing I just want to say, it's really hard. It's been hard being a woman in a man's world. You know, banking is predominantly male dominated. But being an Asian Muslim woman adds another layer of complexity and makes that glass ceiling a little bit thicker, as does class, education, all those things. And, you know, often I'm judged before I enter a room or even before I open my mouth, actually. And when I started out in banking, I was told I don't look like a banker. I even had a client who told me that he didn't want to deal with a woman, which, you know, I was shocked actually, but, you know, it happens. I've been to meetings with my male colleagues where I'm more senior and it's automatically assumed that I'm the junior one. So I've been asked if I'm the assistant, I've been asked to take the notes, you know, I've been asked to make the tea even. So, you know, navigating all of that it's been quite interesting for me. And there's so many negative stereotypes out there about Muslim women. I think people just view Muslim women, you know, in terms of lack in awareness and education based on their own experiences and media. So I've done a lot of educating of my colleagues and clients throughout my career. And during the early part of my career, I used to try and fit in, actually. I used to try and fit in with everyone else. But actually over time, I've realized that my difference is my edge. And my culture, my faith, my values are a big part of who I am. So they go with everything that I do. And so I use my difference as my edge. And the other thing I would say, I've got a really strong network, both internally and externally. And I've spent a lot of time on my network because I came from a background where I didn't have access to a network. So I just had to build that for myself. And that really is my social capital, really is my network. And, particularly now where we're in a world that's virtual, that network is even more important than ever. So, if there's one tip that you're going to take away today is to make sure you keep developing that network. And make sure you reach out to people and you use social media in a really responsible way. I'm going to move on now to just share briefly about what I do as head of charities at Barclays, because I think it's a really interesting role and I'm hugely privileged to be doing it. I just want to say though, in terms of my career path, you can see I put my service career path here, and that's service within the community. Obviously, I was a National Council member for Women's Activities Portfolio from 2015 to 2019. That was an absolute privilege to lead that portfolio, and also during the time of the Diamond Jubilee. And right now, I'm training to be a leadership coach. Coaching is something I'm really passionate about, and I'm also a governor for a multi-academy trust, and that multi-academy trust, has 38% of its students are from a disadvantaged background. So I'm currently in the process of setting up a fundraising activity to raise money so that we can get more laptops for students who are really suffering from digital poverty, as well as food poverty and many other things. And I think this has been the impact of COVID. And just a quick plug from me, you'll see the What is Possible sign there. I currently record a podcast for Barclays. So if you need a new podcast to listen to, please do sign up. It's available via Spotify, Apple and Android. And I cover many topics such as Brexit, the economy, diversity, innovation, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So just very quickly then, I'm just conscious of time and I want to give time for questions. So head of charity, so what do I do? So essentially I lead the charity sector for Barclays. And that's banking services for charities actually. And as you can see, we are the market leader and the most popular bank used by the top 100 charities in the UK. We provide thought leadership, we provide innovation and digital services to charities. I put so many images up here just to share that my role is forever expanding, and it's not just about the banking world, but we've developed some really good tools for charities around financial crime, and that's particularly important for humanitarian aid charities who are trying to get money into places like Syria, and making sure aid gets to the most vulnerable people in the world. And Barclays plays a critical role, and we work with government on this initiative as well. And we launched the Charity Financial Crime Guide a couple of years ago, and we actually hosted the event at the Aga Khan Centre, which was absolutely wonderful. And we had around 30 charities attend. You'll see Sir Captain Tom Moore here. I had to put a picture of him because I think he's been such an inspirational role model throughout this COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, charities have been hugely impacted during COVID-19. And just to give you some stark figures around charities, because of the curtailment of fundraising, and because charity shops are closed, which are a huge part of their income, it is estimated that charities will lose around £12.4 billion worth of income throughout this pandemic, which is a huge amount of money, particularly if you think about what charities do. And it's estimated that 7 million people will seek charitable support in the next 12 months, or during this year at least. And 3 out of 5 of those will be for the first time. So the impact of COVID, in terms of unemployment, food poverty, I've mentioned digital poverty, mental health, has been really stark. And with this huge decline in income, there's even more demand on services for charities. So Barclays has been doing quite a lot to support charities. Last year, we launched our COVID-19 community aid package, where we supported 200 charities with £100,000 each. We are doing a big drive for food poverty. You can see this picture of Marcus Rashford here, but we are doubling our donations to food banks at the moment. And we've partnered with the likes of Refuge, which is the domestic abuse charity, which of course personally really happy about, to support them with their digital strategy as well as the Samaritans. A lot of charities are now having to expedite their digital transformation strategy, and so we are supporting charities with that. And so that's a little bit about what I do, but you know, I run a team across the UK, and I deal with colleagues internationally, and you know, really privileged to have this role, because when I talked about having a sense of purpose and making a difference every day when I finish my job, I know I've made a difference, whether it's to a charity or individuals who rely on that charity. So it's a great role. I've been in the role now for a couple of years. I'm part of a wider public sector team, so we also support education, social housing, and government as well, so anything for public benefit. I just want to share that you would have heard of Barclays Life Skills, and if there's any younger people on this call, you know, I'd urge you to really log on to Life Skills and sign up. It provides those skills that you need to enter the job world, and where you can't get the work experience and the exposure to the workplace that you need, you would essentially need, and you can't right now because of the way we are. Life Skills is a great platform, so I would really urge you to do that. And then Digital Eagles is where we're supporting care homes. So we go in and support our older people with their digital skills and work with the likes of Age UK. So really great platform to work with. And so my role covers banking, partnerships, thought leadership, and areas such as financial crime as well. So that's a bit about what I do as head of charities. I'm just going to touch now on, I guess, diversity and inclusion, because my other role within the bank is co-chair of the Embrace Network, which is the network which focuses on multiculturalism within Barclays. And I took up that role probably around 3 years ago. And if I look at banking, you know, the focus on diversity was primarily around gender. So increasing the number of women in banking, but particularly increasing the number of senior women within banking, because that still is a challenge. And although we've made some progress, there's still a long way to go. And we launched the Embrace Network to really highlight the challenges that ethnic minorities face in banking and face in wider society as well. So since we launched Embrace, which I've been co-chairing now for the past 3 years, we have the Asian Professionals Forum, we have the Black Professionals Forum, and we have 5 faith forums. We have the Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, and Christian forums. And the aim of those forums is really to just be provide a platform and a safe space for people from all different backgrounds to feel supported, to celebrate culture in Barclays, and also to highlight the challenges that we face, whether that's from a personal or professional perspective. And our work has just doubled actually since the Black Lives Matter movement last year, and obviously the tragic death of George Floyd. So we've done a lot of work to support our colleagues, particularly our Black colleagues who've been particularly affected by this, the events of last year. And as you can see, we've launched our Race at Work plan. So we've launched a 12-point Race at Work plan to support ethnic minorities in the workplace and to increase representation at senior levels. So if I look at myself, I'm one of probably 3 Asian females across my business who are at senior level, and if I think of my Black colleagues, there aren't any. So there's a lot of work to be done around the diversity and inclusion space. I also work with supporting, mentoring, and championing women in the workplace. And as you can see, you know, in terms of diversity, we focus on many different areas, whether that's disability, sexual orientation, and parents and mental health and all sorts. So I get involved quite a lot in diversity and inclusion. And why do I do that? Well, you heard my story at the beginning. I know what it's like to feel excluded because of my socioeconomic background, but also excluded because of colour of my skin. And I don't want Ilian to have to go through that. I don't want the next generation to be able to go through that. And you know, it's my duty and responsibility to pave the way for others. And if I can make a little difference in my short time on this earth, then I will do it. So people who work with me, I know, will know that I'm deeply passionate about this subject, and there's a long way to go. It requires a mindset change. And it's really good to see how the community is embracing diversity and inclusion. So love to hear from any of you who are in this field, because I'm always looking for great ways and advice to to champion this further and ensure that we make a difference, not just in the workplace, but in the wider world as well. And for me, diversity is about being the best version of yourself, and bringing your whole self, whether that to work or wherever that may be, and not being afraid of it, but being actually valued for it. So that's kind of where I am on diversity and inclusion. So now I'll just finish off really with some life lessons actually, and things that I've learned across on my journey, and you know, I still have lots to learn, but I think these are the ones that have kind of carried me through and continue to carry me through. So you'll recognize this gentleman on the left. That's Michael Jordan, one of the best basketball players I think the earth has ever seen. But he talks about failure here. I'll leave you to read that quote. But he talks about failure, and how he's failed over and over again. But that's why he succeeds. And I always say you judge somebody by how they respond to failure than how they respond to success, and I truly believe that. So I failed many times in my life. You know, I had to retake my A levels, for example. I didn't get the jobs that I wanted to start with, but you know, I picked myself up, I learned from those mistakes, and I moved on. One of my favorite quotes is, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." I think authenticity is key here. Don't try to be somebody else. Be authentic and be core to your values, and that will carry you through wherever you go. I've talked about success, and I will say there's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs, and you do. And that strong work ethic that my mum instilled in me in a young age has carried me through today. You know, passion about having a job or a career. And I think you've got to find something that you're happy with and you're passionate about, because if you're passionate about it, then you will automatically succeed. And we work for such, 90% of our lives. It's got to be something that we enjoy. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I've always asked for help. You know, if I need help, I will pick up the phone to somebody that can help me. So always ask for help. One of my favorite quotes here from Martin Luther King is, our lives begin the day we become silent. Our lives begin to end the day when we become silent about things that matter. Be a role model, be a change agent. We all have a voice. Be the voice for somebody who doesn't have a voice, and speak up and do it in a positive way and make a difference. And I see that as my role in everything that I do. I talked about kindness, and I love this quote here about we are not all in the same. We are not all in the same boat. Sorry, we are in the same storm. Some have yachts, some have canoes, and some are drowning. And just be kind and help whoever you can. So if you can spare 5 minutes to talk to somebody or have a coffee with someone, then just do it. I mean, that can make a world of difference to them. I've talked about balance, but my favorite quote here is from Amanda Gorman, and she, if you watch the inauguration of Joe Biden, she was hugely inspiring. She has a speech impediment herself, but I love this quote from her poem, The Hill We Climb. And she says, "There is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." So, ladies and gentlemen, all I would say to you is be that light, keep shining. And no matter how tough your journey is, don't worry about the destination, concentrate on the journey. Personality, character, perseverance will get you through, and whatever adversity you face in life, you can learn from that experience and you can have the choice, and you will get there in the end. So I think I'll pause there now and hand back to Sabrina.
Thank you so much, Nazreen, for your inspiring talk. So we've just got a few questions for you, and if anyone has any more, please do feel free to add them in the chat. How do you through all of the things that you've been through, you developed that resilience that you talked about. How do you think we can help young people to become more resilient?
That's a really good question, and I think their resilience is being tested now actually through this pandemic. With homeschooling, GCSEs being postponed and A levels being postponed, university life has changed, and I think actually I'm really hoping that young people take a lot away from this. They will learn something. When you sit back and reflect on what we're just going through right now, I can guarantee to all the young people that are listening, or parents that are on this call, reflect on the situation. Ask your kids, what have they learned? What could they have done differently? And there's no easy way to teach resilience. I think I learned resilience because I went through hardship. But if it's, I think the one thing is failure. I think failure teaches us resilience. And thank you, and actually teaching your kids that it's okay to fail, as long as they understand why they failed and how they can learn from it. Because I think sometimes as parents, we expect quite a lot from our children. We expect them to be the best, we expect them to get the best grades, we expect them to go to the best university. And that's a lot of pressure for a young person to take on. So I think we as parents have a role and responsibility in how we teach that resilience, and how we communicate with our children. And also, I think one of the things that, you know, and I try to instill this in Ilian is, you know, he goes to a school where it's huge diversity, you know, there's kids from all walks of life. And in fact, that multi-academy, a trust I spoke about where I'm a governor, and that's the school he goes to. And the reason I chose to send him to that school is because it's a good school, but actually he's meeting kids from all walks of life. And by doing that, he will develop those life skills, and he will understand how to deal with people from different walks of life, will inevitably help him with his resilience as well. So I can't answer that question in one easy way. I think it's life experiences that teach you resilience. I think it's the understanding of failure, and I think it's understanding as parents the pressure that we put on our children, and just letting them be and helping them to find their own way and their own journey.
Thank you. We've got lots of people saying thank you for sharing your story with us. So just to let you know that a lot of those have come.
My pleasure.
You've had a lot of highlights in your life. What achievement are you most proud of?
Oh, that's interesting. I've got to say, being a parent, I think it's got to be, you know, Ilian is probably my biggest achievement, and he's probably listening here going red in the face. He's borderline teenager now, so he's probably really embarrassed for me to say this, but you know, no one can teach you how to be a parent, and I think all of those that you are parents on this talk today will understand that. You know, there's good days, there's bad days. You come across situations and you think, how am I supposed to deal with that? I think this COVID-19 pandemic actually, you know, has taught me a lot about parenthood, and actually the time that we've been able to spend at home has been, you know, I'm hugely thankful for that, because, you know, I have a career where I'm mostly out of the home, and actually Ilian's become independent as a result, although I think he's probably quite sick of me now and probably wants to go back to school. But I think yeah, I think, you know, being a parent has got to be my biggest achievement, because each day is different, and each day is a challenge, and each day is also a joy actually, and you know, I couldn't ask for more really.
So a question about internal mobility. How did you move from being relationship manager to head of charities, and what advice would you give on internal mobility and creating opportunities for oneself?
So that's a really good question. So I talked about Richard, didn't I, who was my boss, that I was actually quite scared of in the beginning. And he's now kind of a mentor and a sponsor. So I'll talk about mentors and I talk about sponsors. Mentors are really, and sponsors are both important. So mentors, you know, I have mentors inside and outside the organization, and I also mentor people. And mentors help you kind of develop your network. They help you they're kind of your sounding board. They help you navigate your career. They listen to you when you've got a particular challenge at work. So I'm a huge advocate of mentors. I also believe in sponsors, and I have a couple of quite a few sponsors at Barclays. You know, I've worked there for 16 years, so I've developed that. And sponsors are people that will champion you around the table when you're not there. So when that next job is up or that next promotion is up, they'll be sitting around the table saying, you know, we should put Nazreen forward for this job, should be excellent because of X, Y, and Z. And finding those sponsors is hard. So my advice to you is, if you're looking for a mentor to start with, think about people in your organization that are not in your direct business area to start with. So I never have mentors in my business area. They're always outside my business area, and I guess Barclays is big enough to be able to do that. But there's somebody who sits outside because they have a different perspective, and they're also going to help me expand my network. So that would be the first thing. Think about your network. Who do you know outside your business area? If you don't know people, then talk to your line manager. They can help you, and they should help you, or other people that you are other colleagues that can help you find a mentor. If you've got a mentoring scheme as well, join that. Now, sponsors are slightly different. I would say that the way I got a sponsor is I got involved in projects that are outside my role. So when I was a relationship director, I got involved in a number of projects that weren't directly related to my job. And that meant that I got to work with different people that I don't normally work with. And so what happened was, after I did that, I asked those particular people to become my sponsors. I said, you've seen how I work, you've seen how I deliver a project, would you become my sponsor? And so that's how they became my sponsor. I talked about networking and the social capital that brings. Networking is hugely important. You know, as much as I like to say it, not everything is meritocratic. You know, there is an element of who you know and not what you know. Now, for me, I believe I had to work extra hard to get those roles. You know, I think some of my peers had it probably a lot easier than I did. And that's just the nature of organisations that we work with. It has got better. We've made it better. Yeah, I think it's networking is key, and not just networking now in a physical sense, which you can't do, but networking online. So if you're using LinkedIn, how are you using that as a platform to build your network, and how are you doing that authentically and responsibly? Because when we come out of COVID-19, you still want to maintain those relationships. So what I mean by that, well, I have so many people want to LinkedIn with me, and they just send me LinkedIn requests. I have no idea who they are or what they want. So think about, you know, do network responsibly and thoughtfully. So those will be, you know, in terms of internal mobility, that's how I've been able to navigate the organisation. And you have to be politically savvy, unfortunately, and you have to be wise, but you need to have people that are kind of your allies, your mentors and your sponsors that will help you navigate the organisation.
Thank you. Do you think banks should be taking even more responsibility in society, creating more projects to help with things like global warming?
Oh gosh, I mean, you know, I didn't mention about charities. The other side of charities that we get is we get lobbied quite a lot by charities. So people like WWF, for example, have lobbied us on climate change. You would have seen the Greenpeace efforts. You would have seen Barclays in the news a few probably last year, or no, a couple of years ago. Yes, absolutely. Banks have a role because we finance, you know, we provide financing to many different supply chains and systems. We provide financing to many different sectors. You know, the energy sector is a big part of banking. But you will have seen that, you know, that they are taking a huge role in things like climate change. And actually, you know, Barclays is committed to net zero by 2050, actually, and we are looking at divesting and we've also developed a number of products actually that support green infrastructure, things like green bonds, green loans and green trade that all deliver positive environmental benefits. So we're on the journey, and I think we're making really, really good progress. But yes, banks have a key role to play because, you know, we're the largest, you know, part of the economy. If you think about it, you know, financial services contribute hugely, particularly to the UK economy and actually globally. So we can play such a strategic role in delivering that. And I think actually from a charities perspective, we do so much. I talked about partnering with Refuge, I talked about partnering with Samaritans. And if I give the example of Samaritans, Sabrina, you know, we are helping them with their digital technology so they can reach more vulnerable people. Another program that we deliver is Connect with Work, where we partnered with the Prince's Trust and Catch 22, which are two other charities, to help more people get into work who perhaps have the attitude but not the opportunity. So they've got mental health, they've had mental health challenges, you know, they've been carers, they've dropped out of education. So we're actually helping people get back into work. So I think one thing for banks, we probably don't talk a lot about what we do. We don't really sort of say, here's what we do. We do quite a lot, but there's always what we can be doing, absolutely.
What do you think is the one thing we can all do to positively impact diversity and inclusion?
I think less lip service and more action. I see a lot of, you're laughing at me, but it's true. There's a lot of people that talk about, you know, not just people, companies that talk about diversity and inclusion and say, you know, they're all, it's like saying, I'm anti-racist. Well, you know, there's no point just saying I'm anti-racist. You actually have to do and show that you're anti-racist. So I talked about speaking up and challenging. And I know that's not always easy to do and it can be quite uncomfortable, but that's one thing. Using your voice as a positive power. I think positively educating people, you know, look, we're Muslims, the majority of us on this call are Muslims. You know how we're perceived in the wider society. The Somali community actually is one of the most progressive Muslim communities. And the work we do, you know, with AKYSB and various external relations is fantastic. but you know, you don't always have to do it on that scale. It's about talking to people. So I remember when I was at work, I'll tell you a quick story if we have time. And I was talking to my colleague and I said, oh, I'm celebrating Eid tomorrow. And he sort of looked at me and said, Eid, you know, what's that, Naz? Everyone calls me Naz. And I said, well, it's, you know, Muslim celebration to mark the end of fasting. He goes, well, you're Muslim, but you don't even cover your head, Naz. You know, how can you be Muslim? And I, you know, I did laugh because that was complete lack of awareness and understanding. And unfortunately, there are people like that. So I actually took the time, rather than taking offense to it, I took the time to educate him and talk to him a bit about my faith and Islam, and just having those conversations, those open conversations in your office, in your school, in the workplace. As a teacher, Sabrina, you know, you have a role to play. Each of us has a role to play. How we raise our children, you know, that's another role we play. You know, I've got a son, you know, I want to raise him to treat women as his equal, you know, to show him that women can play football, that inshallah one day when he gets married or whatever he decides to do, that if his wife decides to have an amazing career, he will support her. So it's the little things that we can do right from the home, right from the workplace to school, to everywhere, where we can actually make a positive impact on diversity and inclusion, because a lot of it is cultural and a mindset, and it requires changing.
I guess, and linking to that then, the next question would be, what more do you think the institutions could do around gender equality and work with marginalised groups?
So look, you know, I was in the National Council for 4 years. I saw the great amount of work that the institutions are doing. You know, my friend, she's the inclusion lead for the Social and Welfare Board. I think she's listening today. So, you know, I know the work that she's doing. You know, I just, you know, myself and Ilian, we're on the Head Start, you know, learning sign language, for example. I think that's an amazing example of inclusion, you know, for those people in our community who are deaf, and just being able to communicate with them would, you know, demonstrates inclusion. In terms of gender equality, we do need to see more women at senior level. So I think that's a challenge to my National Council colleagues. I will love the day when we see a female president, or a vice president, or both. And I think it's achievable. And if you look at I think it's the British Muslim Council, they've recently appointed their first Muslim female Director General, and who's only 29. I mean, if they can do it, surely we can do it. I think we need more diverse voices around the table. So when you have diversity around the table, you get more diversity of thought. So actually bringing more women, more people from marginalised backgrounds, people with a disability, people from different cultures. You know, we're not just, you know, there's so many, we've got our brothers and sisters from Afghanistan, and so we've got so much diversity in our community. It's about bringing them to the table, and creating equity. And if we create equity and listen to them and understand, then we can make such a big difference. So I think our institutions have a role in terms of the type of people they have in their committees, and that diversity. Our National Council have a role at a senior level. And then our institutions really need to think about the programs that they're delivering, and actually they're already starting to do that, which is great to see.
What do you think individuals and young people particularly can do to help, if they want to get involved with helping charities during this lockdown period, during COVID, if they're wanting to get more involved?
Great question. Listen, charities need your help. I'm plugging for them now. So actually, it's really interesting. So I talk to charities a lot about this. And there's been a real drive actually for more volunteers, particularly when shops open. So when charity shops open, they're looking for more younger volunteers, because actually some of the older volunteers from a health and safety perspective may not be able to return and volunteer at shops, and given the current climate with the pandemic. So there is a link which I'm happy to send, where you can sign up to be a shop volunteer. Just reach out to charities. You know, they do get inundated, but they're always advertising for volunteers to help with various other things. It could be, you know, you could be some of the things that we do is, you know, we ring an elderly person through Age UK, so you can become a friend, an Age UK friend. You can support the Samaritans and become trained as a counsellor. You can help, and actually one thing that charities do need, Sabrina, is digital expertise. And we all know, as you saw at the beginning, I have very little digital expertise, but young people do. And actually a lot of charities are thinking about taking on young people to help them with their digital strategy and their social media strategy. So I'd urge all young people to think about how can you support charities who are having to really repivot their business models. Yeah, and you know, we've got the community, we've got partnerships with charities, we've got iCivic, you know, get involved. There's loads of ways you can get involved, but you know, initially sort of look up the charities. And I mean, I live in Harrow, and Harrow do a local newsletter where they have a list of all the charities that need help, all the food banks, etc. So, you know, sign up to your local borough council, and I'm sure you'll be able to see a lot of examples of where you can help.
What do you think are still the challenges remaining in banking that needs to change in the next decade? What kinds of things would you like to see change?
In banking, oh gosh, well, obviously more women at the helm. It's got to happen, right? And you know, I'm really pleased to see that in my business, the UK head of the corporate bank, she's Muslim and she's female, which is absolutely wonderful to see. But we need more. We need more diversity in banking. Definitely, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for banking, and one that they're very aware of. So, and diversity from not just a gender, but also ethnic representation, sexual orientation, disability, all of that. For me, I mean, look, digital is transforming banking. So, you know, we are being disrupted by, you know, financial technology, from innovation, and so we've got to keep up with the pace. So I think the way banking is changing, you know, digital is a big thing. And yeah, you know, I think the way people choose to do their banking is changing. Now, that's a really hard one, because I think if you're like me, you're on an app or you don't even go to a branch, but there's still cross sections of society that still need a bank and still use cash. So, you know, banking is changing, but, you know, banks have a difficult balance to do in terms of how people do their banking. We've talked about things like climate change. There's other things like modern slavery. We've talked about diversity and inclusion. We've talked about other social impact that banks can make. So, you know, the whole ESG agenda is coming to the horizon, and I think banks can embrace that and helping people how they make investments, whether that's from a sustainable or a impact perspective. So the types of products that banks need to offer, how they innovate, how they offer banking, and then how they kind of positively impact wider society, I think will continue, and that's topped with kind of diversity and inclusion.
And the last question, there's a couple of similar questions on the thread of where next for you? Would you work for the government?
Would I work for the government? Oh my goodness. Well, certainly not this government, and it's probably best not to get into politics at this stage. Would I work for government? Who knows, actually. I could see myself as Mayor of London. Maybe that might be the next role. Who knows, right? I never say never, because who knows what's around the corner. I think potentially maybe I should become Arsenal's manager. I think they could do with a female manager at the moment. Maybe that might change their prospects in the Premier League. And that's another area where we do need to see more women, right? So who knows? But right now I'm really enjoying my head of charities role. Every day, as I say, I make a difference. I love working with the charity sector. I love working with my team, and every day brings a new challenge as well as something positive. So I'm kind of really content with where I am, but you know, I'm always kind of looking at what next. I talked about my coaching. I'm really passionate about coaching people, and I'm coaching a few people at the moment, and I'm going for my coaching accreditation, which hopefully I'll get this year. But that's really about making sure that there are more diverse voices in coaching, and actually coaching is accessible to people from all different backgrounds, because there's this perception that coaching is only available to a certain group of people because it's deemed quite expensive. So I want to make coaching available to everybody, and those underrepresented groups. So that's kind of one of my visions and aims. And maybe, you know, that'd be something, you know, maybe run my own coaching business one day, who knows? But you know, government, now you planted the seed, it could well be.
Brilliant. So we look forward to seeing you there one day. A chance, do have a look at some of the comments. There's some real positive comments of people saying thank you for giving us your time. And I would like to just thank you as well for sharing with us, particularly your honesty about all of the challenges that you faced on your journey, and your willingness to talk about topics that we don't always talk about. I think you're an inspiration in so many ways. And And so thank you very much for taking the time out to speak to us. Thank you all to everybody else as well for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the session. Please do look out for our next one, which will be on International Women's Day, which is on Monday, the 8th of March, where Pinky Lilani, CBE, will be talking. Please note the change of day from a Wednesday to a Monday. And please could you also complete our evaluation form, the code of which will be seen on the screen and in the comments box. We'd appreciate that, thank you. And Nazreen, while people are doing that, I'd just like to hand over to you for some final words, please.
Just want to say thank you for having me today. It's a real honour to be asked to do these things, and I really appreciate Stories on the Rooftop and Aga Khan Youth and Sports Board for giving me this opportunity. Thank you to everyone who signed up and dialed in today and gave up your Wednesday evening to listen to me. Like I said from the very beginning, I hope you've taken something away from my talk today, whether it's no matter how big or no matter how small, and something that maybe will help you with a challenge or a situation that you're facing at the moment, or maybe when you're on your personal and professional journey, you'll remember Nazreen and you'll remember her wise words, and that may help you. So, and I just want to say, keep shining bright. Wherever you have an opportunity to make a difference, just make a difference. It doesn't have to be big grand gestures. It could be just taking the time to listen to someone. And if there's anybody here who wants to reach out to me and who needs any support with anything, you know, my door is always open, and I'll do my best to support. So I'll probably leave it at there, Sabrina.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.